Here we go. Number 2, approved minutes of September 9th, 2010.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 3, consideration of the request for water availability for 1020 Sundown Circle. Excuse me while I get this rock out of my foot.
This is nothing different that we haven't done with others that when they're within our water community.
This is
so
in
this
the
is consistent
Legends
with,
Ridge area.
Okay.
And in fact, the only reason we see these is because we have a policy that requires that we see them.
Correct.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Number 4, consideration of the purchase of the property known as 306 Fifth Avenue North, tax map 63N, Group D, parcel 16, at a cost of $245,000 for the Hillsborough Road Improvements Project.
If you recall, and it's in the memo, if you recall back a year ago, July, I think it is, July.
What's in that address now?
That's where the fueling station was, and the flower shop, that they've taken the tanks out and all that.
There was a guy pressure washing over there today.
Pressure washing.
They use it as a pull-in site.
They were pressure washing the store.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. So, yeah, they've finally been in and cleaning it out and everything. But
there's not a tenant going, well, I don't know of one.
No,
the flower shop.
They put it up for sale.
Okay.
And when they put it up for sale, we tried to react to make sure that it didn't
Because
get
when we do
sold.
the project, we're going to take up so much of the parking and the frontage that it's going to have,
The resolution in July of 2009 from the board was that we were going to purchase that whole piece of property.
Right, but even if we didn't, we'd be paying a condemnation and an inverse condemnation.
Potentially, yes.
So there's a little price difference.
Realistically.
Yes, and we made the offer, and Mr. Stuckey and I worked on this, but we made the offer contingent upon board approval, plus that the sale price would not exceed an appraised price by more than 3%. It is less than, it's right around 1%.
Okay.
The appraisal was $242,500, and the offer is $245,000.
Okay.
So.
I don't know, Mark, I'm comfortable with either one of those. I mean, the market value and the price, there's a difference of about a couple $1,000s. I would move approval as recommended.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Number 5, consideration of the agreement with Christ United Methodist Church for the construction of certain improvements in lieu of payment for the dedication of a temporary construction easement.
I handed out the agreement. We just got, since the law department's been out, we just now got it reviewed by them, but they have looked at this. And what it is, this is in conjunction with the Jackson Lake dredging project, and we needed a laydown area. In other words, an area that we could put the socks that's going to dewater the water when we pull it out of the lake. And to get this easement, et cetera, this is something we've worked out with Christ United Methodist Church. We will be constructing for them a box culvert across a dry branch to be able to get to the other side of their property. It will be left in place. They will be the maintaining it. The overall cost, we figure it's going to cost us probably around $50,000 to $75,000 for the culvert, but it will help reduce the cost of the drainage because we will have a local area to be able to lay down materials and stuff like that instead of having to try to haul it off so wet. So we think it's going to be advantageous for us to go in and do this, but we do have to get approval for the agreement, and then that way also that you'll be aware that there is an additional cost to the project of the box culvert that was not necessarily anticipated on the front end, but we think we have it covered in the estimated cost.
But there's no cost associated with
the easement itself. There's no cost, but there is a cost going to be added to the Jackson Lake dredging project because we're going to bid this as a part of that project, and it will be used by the contractor to do his work.
I saw it.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Number 6, consideration of the final change order on the Boyd Mill water line project with Millen Construction in the amount of 0. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know.
do we need a zero?
I'm not sure why it showed up on there.
All right.
Just to close out the project.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. 7, consideration of the final change order on the Sharps Branch Sanitary Sewer Rehabilitation Project with Insituform Technologies, Inc., a deduct in the amount of $56,341.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 8, consideration of the final change order on the Fieldstone Farms Pump Station Number 2 project with L&C Contractors, a deduct in the amount of $22,080.40.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
9, consideration of the final change order on the Carter Street Area Water and Sewer Upgrade Project with L&C Contractors, an increase, see, it's always like that.
Okay, wait.
You save some money and then you got to give it away. An increase in the amount of $47,257.22.
Move approval. I think that project ended up looking 100% better. I'm sure that additional cost. Have you all been over there?
It was all about the
Water,
asphalt.
yeah.
The road was just in terrible shape, and so they needed to more bedding, more binder to get it
Yeah.
stable.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 10, discussion of ordinance 2010-65, an ordinance to establish no parking fire lane zones on portions of Ardmore Place and Wiregrass Lane in the city of Franklin, Tennessee. This one, I feel sure, I remember we kicked this one because we didn't feel like maybe we had told everybody that I felt like we ought to tell.
Right.
Is there anyone here on this subject? La la.
We sent letters
If
to
you
you
wish
and
to,
everybody.
if you want to come up and talk with us, come on up. This request was brought to us by a school bus driver.
School bus driver raised it, and then fire department looked at it and concurred.
Well, the fire department, to be honest, would make everything no parking. God bless them.
They don't want any.
Yeah, there's a balance.
They want to be able to run they want to be able to run the biggest truck we don't even own 60 miles an hour up to the smallest.
George can't get us LRT through there.
Mr. Mayor, how are you doing?
Have a seat, tell us who you are, tell us where you live, and we'll include you in the conversation before making an arbitrary and capricious decision.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for giving us.
Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. George Regg, my wife Patsy and I reside at 459 Wiregrass Lane,
Okay?
which is at the north end of the complex down near Boyd Mill. We first was aware of the problem when we got our notice from the city engineering department. Met with neighbors, and all the neighbors that I spoke to, which was the majority, objected to the proposed ordinance.
Sure they did.
There was no petition, was it?
No, this was strictly, just so you guys know, sometimes we get these things, sometimes the city gets drawn into these things, and it turns out that there's a big controversy among neighbors, because some want it, some don't. In this case, this was obviously brought to our attention for action by safety people, bus driver, then fire department. And we had this actually on the agenda a month or so ago, and I don't want to take too much credit, but this struck me as something that we probably needed to let the neighborhood participate in before we made any decision. And I should say the other committee members and staff were quick to agree. So you don't want it, and you've talked to a bunch of your neighbors.
Yes.
You understand the issue driving that.
I'm aware from the letter. I don't live right in the curb. I live about 3 houses.
And this is in West Haven.
Correct.
And does West Haven have any kind of HOA restrictive covenant on street parking?
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
In fact, as I recall it, being on the board at the time, HOA, the West Haven concept contemplated on-street parking.
They encouraged it, and the residents who were there wanted at least the ones that were at our meeting. And they even had some suggestions for the school bus driver.
Well, we had multiple suggestions of the way we thought it should be done in the no parking ban, because it really is a detriment to those 22 homeowners that are affected by this proposed ordinance. There are 22 of us. if you're familiar with West Haven, we all have alleyways similar to old neighborhoods, and there are prohibition from parking in the alley. No one parks in the alley except the contractors and their subs when they're building properties. After they build, there's no one in the alleys. We are allowed to park on the streets.
You don't even want to know the argument we had to have with the fire department to even have the alley in the first
I've done
place.
some research, and I'm aware that
They did not like that at all.
I would suggest that as far as the safety of the neighborhoods in Franklin, we have the best designed neighborhood for safety vehicles. They can come to our house from so many different directions, front, back. The alleys and the roadways are adequate. Now, if those curves are defective, it's because of, there are three parties involved. It's the city, the Southern Land Company, and the homeowners. The city and the Southern Land Company, built, designed, and approved those. It was, the homeowners are innocent, had nothing to do with the design. And the solution is to penalize the homeowners. We have no place for guests to park if this ordinance is approved. There's no common area parking similar to a condominium association where you have a common area parking area. We don't really need one because the parking in front of our homes is adequate and for guests. But if we are banned from parking, we have no place for our guests to park. But more importantly, I think with those 22 homes being singled out in a neighborhood of hundreds of homes today, maybe thousands before it's completed, we will be singled out as houses with restrictions that other homes don't have. So you can imagine your realtor bringing a prospect by to look at your house. You have to do a drive-by to show them the house, and then your prospects say, "Are we going to stop and look at it?" And the realtor says, "No, we got to drive down to the next block and find a parking place." It just doesn't make sense, and it's unfair to the 22 neighbors that are homeowners that are affected by this proposed ordinance.
Yeah, here's my thought on this thing. I appreciate the concern for safety that was initiated by the bus driver. I likewise respect and value the opinions of the fire department, and I understand how they look at the world. However, if we went out and put up no parking signs everywhere that this conceivably could happen, we would need to start printing those signs now and keep printing them indefinitely. There are entire neighborhoods, never mind just parts of neighborhoods, there are entire neighborhoods that if we were to do this, we would have a hard time telling bus drivers or fire department that no. My first house in Franklin was on a cul-de-sac in zero lot lines, and although I've seen the fire trucks go through there, if you tried to take away on-street parking in Trent Park, you'd have an open revolt. So my inclination is to say thank you to the bus driver for being concerned, and thank you to the fire department for telling us what they would prefer, but respectfully decline to do that. We can't legislate ourselves out of all risk. And I hope that I hope that no one ever comes in and says, if only they could have gotten the fire truck onto Ardmore Place or Wiregrass Lane, they might have saved my house or my brother or whatever. I hope that never happens, but we can't legislate our way into zero risk. We have to be willing to take some risk and balance those risks against the other factors, including neighborhood preferences and convenience.
George, I thought some of the solutions that you all presented were very good, very logical. Just move the school bus stops to Jasper and whatever that other street is. Addison, all right.
Well,
Jasper, not Addison. The children will have to walk
you would find it easier to cul-de-sac both ends of Ardmore than to convince the school board, Edulog, to move a school bus stop. I mean, no disrespect to them, but they're pretty committed to their,
It's not a matter of moving the school bus stop, it's just a matter of not stopping in front of each child's
That's
house.
right.
Are they doing that now?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, and that's what's ridiculous. I'm a retired school teacher.
District does it,
That-
why
that-
can't they do it?
They don't do it in my neighborhood. They don't stop in their house.
They do in ours, they stop in front of every single house to pick
well,
up
that's
one
called,
child.
that's called a carpool, not a school bus.
Yes.
Well,
And if you want to be in a carpool, God bless you, be in a carpool.
Well, that's why we're sitting here going, you're going to take the nature of our housing development here, and that street in particular, that is a unique street within West Haven and within Franklin. It's a cigar park.
Have there
And you
been
want
any-
to shut it down on the ends. That's ridiculous.
Have there been any conversation with the school board?
I wasn't aware that there was an issue, you know. I live at one end, I don't know that we've had a problem down at the north
I
end.
live at the other end.
There is a
That's where the
resident,
issue is.
there's a resident, go ahead.
One person who parks their car out there. If they're in the way, push them out, ticket them. And this is, I've only lived there 4 months. The neighbors who live around me have been dealing with these people for some time. So it's an ongoing issue with one house.
We don't have anything like that anyway.
Oh, I know.
No, we have never been asked to referee a neighborhood dispute. I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. I mean, they might go and do something incredibly stupid, like first put up no parking signs, and then a month later take them down.
No, real Shirley.
I mean, come on.
Come Shirley.
It is silly. What a bunch of buffoons.
You absolutely had to do it. We talked at that meeting about changing the corners, adding a little more to the street.
Yes.
But as far, let the fire engines go through the alleys, let the school buses stop on Jasper and Addison, and let it, it doesn't cost a penny.
Each end of those circular areas, each end, the north and the south end, could be reduced in size. There's no public utilities in those islands. There is one electric light pole, irrigation lines, and maybe one wastewater culvert, groundwater culvert that drains water. It would not be a significant investment, to repair that permanently if, in fact, the angle is not designed properly. If the curves are too sharp, I don't know that they are. I have a 40-foot RV that when I tow my vehicle, I come through there. I'm 60 feet long, and we come in from our trips. We stop and unload refrigerated and frozen items in our clothing. And I've never had a problem navigating those turns. Now, I don't recall if there was a car parked right in the curve at the time. I just don't remember. But I've gone right through them and circled right out of the neighborhood and gone to the RV storage lot and left my RV there.
Well, I'm
There is
parked.
not a problem if there's no parked cars.
I
Now,
parked
what-
my car there, and there was, I could see if a moving van or something came, he might have a little trouble getting around.
What engineering is looking at, this was approved. It was a design, it is a traditional neighborhood design, and what we have advocated in the past, we would advocate again. If you're going to do these, then it needs to be a design such that you have parking somewhere where you can avoid having to park. In other words, like your Sturbridge, where you have parking in the median area, things like that. That's the concern. It's if a car's parked there, fire truck will not be able to probably get through the bigger fire trucks. It's a risk. He'll wire up in the median. Unless you hard armor the median, he will.
That's what we need to do, pave that park.
So,
Good job.
well, you can do it as impervious, and still be green, but I'm not advocating it, I'm just saying what the situation is and what we have in engineering
here's the
have
thing.
recommended
Here's
before
the
to
thing.
avoid.
The neighbors, the risk to the neighbors has been made clear to the neighbors. Did we get back some surveys?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we got additional
the information
ones.
in the memo.
We had 30 respond, we had 9 in favor, 21 against.
Okay.
And
21 or 22 homeowners. One homeowner didn't get the package because it's a new home.
And the 9?
The 9 were just, I don't know where they came from.
The 9 were on the...
surveyed 56 areas.
So we had 50% participation, a little more than that. And 2/3 said no.
Okay.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the neighborhood at risk has, in my view, asked us to allow them to accept the risk. We are not here to save ourselves from ourselves.
And what staff is recommending at this point is that we continue with this, but we work with the neighborhood and Southern Land to look at some things like removing the boulders, realigning the school routes, that kind of stuff, to try to alleviate.
I'm for any of that. However, the request was for, the action item was for no parking.
And I move that we reject that request.
Ms. Martin has moved.
I will second her request.
Okay. And we have had a discussion. Is there anything else anyone wants to say? All in favor of recommending to the board that we reject the request for no parking on these portions of these two streets, say aye.
Aye.
Do you want to
I am perfectly happy to
accept
hear.
option 3, which was
Well,
Option 3 did explain.
here's my, when we, I would be perfectly happy to have, let me ask you this. The only thing we asked in the survey was, do you want no parking or not?
right.
I'm perfectly happy to have staff and the neighborhood come back with whatever consensus may form on option 3 or something like it. But I don't know that I feel better about these things when we have not just those that are willing. I mean, I feel better about making decisions when we have had ample circulation and time for people to say what they want to say about, in this case, option 3.
If we're removing boulders and getting the school bus routes changed,
Well, we don't have.
we may not need to take action.
We don't,
I just want to make sure
we don't have authority to change the school bus routes, and if Southern Land and the HOA want to move boulders, they don't need my permission, I don't think.
Option 3, I don't think takes any action by the board.
We'll pursue that if everybody's comfortable, assuming the other parties involved, residents
Sure. I mean,
and Southern Land are
if you need-
in compliance.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
As I told you at the meeting, the one person that I heard from did not want to identify herself. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's an anonymous
And we don't deal with
request.
anonymous.
Well, I mean,
If they want action.
we've decided not to do anything, so.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot for
Thank you very much.
Number 11 is street project status reports.
Any questions of any of the project managers?
We have project managers here, if you'd like.
Is this 12 or 13?
Okay, because I'm the advocate.
This is 11. 11 is street.
What about?
Go ahead.
Status.
That was 10.
Yeah, we're trying to get the contractor to finish it up there. They've just got a couple more things. We had a walkthrough last week, went through, identified a few of the punch list items they still have to do, and just got a few things left to do, and then they'll do the final topic.
But looking at it, just doesn't seem like we just need to close it.
What are you doing?
Columbia Avenue. Just when are we gonna get that final pavement and
Wish we could have gotten it ready before this week.
yeah. That's the only one.
What's this weekend?
My anniversary.
we had an argument.
That is a big event.
You don't have this.
Great actor.
They're Civil War days. But maybe by Pumpkin
That's
Fest?
right, the tourists.
What is Pumpkin
The
Fest?
money
The
that's
30th?
not there.
My bad.
Don't mention that word.
We're just going to have a reenactment.
We'll have live.
Okay, that's number 11. Number 12, water management.
Wait a minute.
Did you have-
I'm not finished with 11.
Okay, I just said that's it, but if you want to go back, which one do you have?
I want to talk about South Carruthers. Chris is here. And I think he's got some ideas. Where are we on South Carruthers?
South
haven't funded the construction.
is not funded for any construction. It is a part of your CIP that will be
Is
discussed.
it designed?
It is
Okay, it's designed and not funded.
It's It's not funded, but
And we've got right-of-way money.
We have purchased right-of-way, we do have some right-of-ways, et cetera, but there's no funding for construction, so that's where we are. It is a part of your CIP. It will be, I'm sure, a large part of your discussion during that time.
We've got the majority of the right of way. What we do not have are Chris's is one of them, which and they've told us they're waiting until we have funding for the construction. I mean, they own the property, they're ready to move forward, but it doesn't. We're not in any rush to get it. I mean, we've got an agreement in place that they'll give it to us. So really, they're just, I mean, they want to see it funded and then they'll sign the papers. So.
And there's a lot of worthy projects that have to be processed in the CIP analysis.
So what are we waiting for before we decide whether or not we're going to fund it?
Funding of construction. When you did your priorities last time, the funding for that, we just didn't have enough money in our judgment, in the judgment of the board overall, to fund that project. It was just outside of the line in terms of where we funded projects. And so now we're returning to look at an update of priorities and to look at the potential of any capacity to do additional projects.
Well, with what Mike said the other night, about all of the development that's coming in, I asked why we would even consider development without the road being built, and the mayor said we'd never get anything built if we waited for that. Remember?
I don't think I said that.
Yes, you did. No, you did say it. And you said...
It just sounds like something.
And, I think we're going to find ourselves in a big mess if we allow Chris and Paul and all of them to do all of this development down there, and we're on a little two-lane road.
And that's why our CIP discussion from this book can be very important as we set those new priorities.
Okay, we don't know when we're going to discuss that book, do we?
We're setting that date. We're going to work with you to set that date as a special work session. That's what we talked about on Tuesday. So we're in the process of going through and seeing when that can work. We're targeting first or second week in November, just depending on what we can get schedules to work. So we'll start on that now.
3 or 4 projects rise at a time, and that's where we will be debating.
Sure. Mr. Pascal, you want to come up and talk to us?
Just a couple of things, and I've been trying to get with, thanks. I'm speaking, but can't help myself.
Chris Pascal.
Who are you? Golfer extraordinaire. Sorry. One of the thoughts, and I've met with 4 of the aldermen, and I've got 4 others at this table I plan on calling this week to get meetings scheduled with. Of course, we have a very vested interest in that part of the city. We've been working very diligently on Lockwood, on Nichols Bend. We are actively pursuing financing at this time, so I'm having lots of fun right now. But one of the thoughts, we've been thinking of all sorts of ways to skin the cat, and certainly all of us would love to see Carruthers built out as a 4-lane section for the entire design length that you've got from our northern boundary down to the Harpeth River. It's approximately 2 miles, the bridge. I think Eric has worked with the folks at Ladd Park, even connecting it within that project, getting us out to Long Lane and connecting it. I'm an advocate to get something going if funding is allowed. And in past projects that have large master planning communities I've been involved with, oftentimes when we've got a 4-lane section, if we don't have demand capacity or demand for all 4 lanes, we built the eastern or western 2 lanes and then come back later and built the other 2 lanes. And we basically run that as a 2-lane opposite direction road and then later come in and add the other 2 lanes. I only suggest that as a way to get something going. If building it down to our south property line, and Eric and his team have designed a connection between existing Carruthers and new Carruthers at our south property to help alleviate traffic that's coming from Arnold Road. I think there are ways to get something going down there that, right now the Bond property and the Helm property, which is the 270 acres to the south of us, the river, There's no entitlements, there's no plans for entitlements, there's nothing in the works for entitlements down there. Those are just owned by investors and the owners at this point. So those are a ways out. Now, clearly, Ladd Park is underway, and they would love to have Carruthers in place. And so again, I'd be an advocate to get it all the way down there, but my thought is if we could at least get a section of it down, either 2 lanes all the way to the river and across and connect to Ladd. I don't know the traffic study, but I seem to recall seeing the number at one point. It just didn't seem like even at build-out there was such a high volume of traffic for a long time. I mean, eventually there will be, that would really necessitate 4 lanes today. So I guess my thought is to get something going instead of building all of it at once. Maybe engineering could look at ways to phase it in and build in components of it so that you weren't asking for $15 or $17 million all in one shot. Maybe we've done some cursory estimates based on our current cost of construction in Barclay, and again, I was going to have our GC actually just do an estimate, but I think those 2 lanes could be done at a substantial discount, especially if the bridge wasn't built today. Now, I know you've got environmental permits and a lot of things you guys don't want to have to go reapply for. You'd love to see those utilized now, and so I'm very sensitive to that as well. But we're prepared to develop off of South Brothers Road. Our entitlements allow us to do that. We aren't going to be building 300 houses a year or anything like that. So, we won't be building in such a volume. I think that's going to stress that road. But we certainly would alter our development plan and how we phase the project if South Brothers Road was going to be built next year, starting construction.
Would that be used when they are working on 65?
The new Carruthers? Well, I think you'd have. I guess that would.
Will the old Carruthers be used?
Some people, but you've got to go quite a ways out to get to it.
It's not very convenient.
There will be some additional traffic when 65 gets congested because of widening or construction of the interchange. But as it is existing now, it will not relieve much. If you built a 2-lane, it would help relieve. Whether you can get a 2-lane, even a 2-lane built, we don't know. Well, of course, you got the widening already, one portion of the widening already bid, so they're getting ready to do a contract for that. TDOT is. As far as the interchange itself, we don't know when that's coming on. We don't know if we could get even a 2-lane built first. We had pushed the project in years past trying to do that, but we don't know if it's going to happen. There's all kinds of, as Chris talked, there's all kinds of ways you can phase the project. We've advocated in the past on projects of doing only 2 lanes. Overall, typically you have a savings if you can afford to go on and do the 4 lanes. If you're going to have a need for 4 lanes within the first, say, 10 years or so of the first of any construction, but there's all kinds of phasing things you can do.
My concern simply is that if we wait to build 4 lanes and a bridge, are we 4 or 5 years out there? And then we are really constrained again down there. And if we could get 2 lanes down to connect over to South Carruthers, now you've got a reliever for all that traffic that comes off Arnold Road today that comes up and uses South Carruthers. And that's what you all heard. Well, Planning Commission heard a couple weeks ago from some folks on the rezoning concept plan amendment for Simmons Ridge. And that was some of the feedback we had heard as well, with some concerns, not about our project, but about just existing traffic and on South Carruthers. It's not I'm on that road a lot because I'm down at the project. I wouldn't say there's, I've never been in any traffic on that road, but certainly if, my thinking is if you could get a couple lanes down, build half of it, because we're about half of the road, we're 5,000 feet of it, that would just take 5,000 feet out you got to build later. And
have you begun your building?
No, ma'am. No, we are anticipating submitting a site plan for construction probably either late 4th quarter or late 1st quarter, depending on financing. So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt y'all, but I just
thank you for sharing that with us.
If we can be of any assistance, we're obviously studying that whole area quite a bit and all that, but we think something like that might be worthwhile considering, because this is Dave and Eric's world, but just judging by what our current construction costs are for a section of width that we think is actually a little wider, it's at Barclay we've got, and I know the paving depths are different and all that, but we're spending about $340 a linear foot for a section of street, which is 12-foot wide lanes plus a parking lane plus all utilities, water, sewer, storm, electric. Carruthers wouldn't have any utilities in it. That's all separate, as I understand it anyway. You've got storm in there. So prices are so much lower than they were just 2 years ago, and I don't know if this has been bid in the last couple of years.
Well, is the CIP set up to contemplate the option where we do 2 lanes now and...
It's not shown. It's shown as the full project, but I mean
we can cost that option.
Why don't you put in there option B? Because as I recall, the traffic impact is strung out to the point that there is, I think, a significant delay between.
What would you like to see those options be? Would you like to see it stop at the river and not do the bridge, or would you like to?
Well, the bridge is built for 4 lanes either way.
It's 2 bridges. It's set up to build. It's set up to where you have 2 different bridges where you separate them. Just like.
Well, now I'm not an engineer and I'm not in construction, but it strikes me as this mobilizing to put in a bridge at a totally different time. Tell me, but I'm interested to know if we can put something in that.
From what I understand, Danny, because I think the other big issue is your environmental permits. You want to use those. And again, I'm treading on dangerous waters with my limits of knowledge here. But from what I understand, if you put at least the abutments in for all 4 lanes, I believe you basically then all you got to do is crane in your spans.
You mean for the bridge?
Mm-hmm. So in other words, if you built 2 of the 4 lanes completely, but put the abutments in of the structure, the superstructures on the embankments, then I think you've done what you needed to do for your environmental permits. And I don't know what the cost difference is between that phase and then just finishing it.
Well, look, I don't know enough about road building to know. Tell me what the choices are. I am willing to consider doing less than the entire project if it might create an opportunity for us to do it effectively and efficiently in phases. And entertaining.
If you recall, we do have it set up for only 2 lanes south of the bridges.
Okay.
Across Ladd, right now, that's the way it's set up, and that's what you're doing.
I think we talked about phasing it at one time to not even get to the bridge, but I think.
Well, could you do 2 lanes and the bridge to get to Ladd Park?
We can do, yes. We can phase it in just about any way you want to have it phased. But you can get 2 lanes.
Some options.
You can get 2 lanes the whole route, and then come back and do 2 lanes later. Like I said, the bridge is not a 4-lane bridge. It is 2-lane bridges. Okay. And we set it up for various reasons, and that could be one of them.
Talk to me a little bit about the environmental permit that we may or may not.
They expire.
Okay, yeah. So how much will
Chris is right to a large extent, but if you come back and you're doing construction, you're still going to have to do some sort of environmental. The worst part of the environmental is the structures themselves, but you're still going to have some. It's depending on when you think you're going to have the second one, is whether you're going to do that or not. The problem you have with doing the abutments is you're going to end up with exposed reinforcement, et cetera, that has a tendency to deteriorate over time. So you have to weigh things like that.
And just one last parting comment. One suggestion I would make on the phasing discussion is again, this is a very self-serving comment, but maybe just look at what the cost would be to run it to the connector road between old and new corridors that's designed. And I only say that because getting across the bridge to me would be important because you do connect Ladd and it creates that traffic reliever and it helps the 65 situation. But if that still is too much, I would appreciate consideration of at least looking at getting it to our south property line and making that connection to South Carruthers, which would be a relief, for those and frankly, alleviate some of the concerns of the residents in that area. So at least the majority from Sims Ridge, from Nichols Bend, and the commuter traffic could get over to New Carruthers. So, I'm sorry to interrupt y'all.
Thanks,
Okay.
Chris.
I'm sorry, I'd like to say something, not about this, if that's okay, but still on number 11. And that is looking at the Hillsborough Road, which is, after all, our number one project besides Matt Catcher. And I want to ask about where are we, I've tried to read this about where we are. We do not have this designed, is that correct, completely?
Correct. No, we've got right-of-way designed, right-of-way plans designed.
We can't get final design until we finish the acquisition of right-of-way.
Which we
And so
can't
where
start-
are we
which
on
can't-
acquisition
which
of
we cannot-
right-of-way?
We cannot start until we get the contract approved from TDOT.
We need TDOT approval to start right away, and that is in TDOT's court right now.
If you recall, we had to do an additional contract with TDOT for Hillsborough Road. We sent that back to them in early August or early September, and we have not received it back executed yet. And we cannot get authorization to start any right-of-way until that comes back, and then they'll have to give us authorization for right-of-way acquisition. Then we can start the process of right-of-way acquisition.
So why are we planning to go ahead and buy that piece that's on 4th Avenue?
Because
I mean,
we can
Fifth
get,
Avenue?
because it was a flooded piece of property, the price of the property has been diminished due to that situation. It was offered at a very reasonable, we felt, price. We've gone through the appraisal process, got it good, and the appraisal comes back showing that. We're not having to buy anything at a pre-flood, as in other instances. The offer was as is. And it was something the board approved back in July of 2009 that we were going to purchase that property. We just felt it was the most economical time to do that, so we have pushed forward to it. And the decision, of course, is the board to follow through with, but that's coming to you at your next meeting.
Well, the other thing is, there's no TDOT right-of-way that we have to acquire for it. If there's any right-of-way or easements associated with the roadway, that's where we have to have our authorization for it. There's no right-of-way.
TDOT's not involved in this one, so we can move forward as a local
So
purchase.
even though it's a part of that project,
The existing right-of-way across that property is adequate for the project. We do not have to buy any more right-of-way on that piece of property. So it's just a city purchase.
We could go to each property and acquire the easements for the utilities that we've got to relocate, and then come back at another time and purchase the easements and the right-of-way separately, but that's going to cost us a lot more, plus more time. So we're trying to do everything on one property at one time. With this one, where it doesn't have state right-of-way, we can purchase the whole property at once. We don't necessarily need TDOT's approval for that.
okay. One reason I was asking about that is whenever I was looking at the materials with the road impact fees, I noticed that on that page 22, they indicate that Hillsborough Road has capacity for about somewhere between 11,000 and some other places 21,000. But if you look at those pieces, those properties there, they're showing the existing ADT exceeds what we think of as the capacity there, at least based on what the Duncan and Associates say. So that is the reason I think that is number one on our priority list. But I do want to say I was very interested to hear about possibly looking at some other projects, maybe not being the full-blown, everything has to be done at one time. I think we might look at that on McEwen also.
We have been advocating on Facebook.
That's right. And but the other thing is, thinking about the finance part, if you look, whenever we've been talking about finances, the projects that we have already agreed to fund, even though we haven't passed on the funding, they are right at the top of what we can borrow in the next how many years. So please keep that in mind, that if something is added, something else is probably going to have to be subtracted, unless our finances change a lot.
Mike, do you have a comment?
I had a question. A couple of years ago, there was we voted about how many lanes there should be there at the intersection of McHatcher and Hillsborough.
Correct.
The state had said we needed one, and we voted.
The state said 7.
Yeah.
We have had an ongoing disagreement with the state about how many lanes at the intersection and the length of the project. The state has long advocated 5 lanes, the length of the project, and 7 at the intersection. The policy of this board in several iterations has been that that would be devastating to the quality of the neighborhood and to prefer a less impactful design.
I appreciate that, but is this going to cause delays in negotiations with the state on this project?
On this one? On Hillsborough?
Yeah.
That's the reason it's taken us so long to get to where we are. One of the
part of this, the reason.
But we're beyond that.
But at this point, that's
We're
a
beyond
decided
that.
issue.
Yeah, we're beyond that.
We're just waiting for
The
them.
answer is it has caused delays,
Yes.
but it is not causing further delays.
Yeah, at this
No,
point,
we
we're
got
dealing
beyond
with the
that
design we
issue
have that the
2 or
board
3 years
has,
ago.
that the board has directed, and we're just trying to work through the TDOT process to get the approval to go forward with right away.
Okay. Number 12, water management project status reports.
Here you are.
Mark was so excited to get up.
I don't know if you have any specific questions, or I can run through.
Do we have water in the reservoir this morning?
Yeah.
We have rainwater in the reservoir this morning. We're not pumping.
How much?
Oh, well, the river got up to about 6 cubic feet per second, which is still below our pump requirement, or I guess the limit.
But how much rain collected?
Oh, I'm not sure how much volume is up there right now.
An inch?
There's a few inches in certain areas.
It's a whole bottom cover.
Did you figure your capacity?
They're doing survey. I haven't gotten the results of survey yet, so I'll let you know as soon as I get it.
Let me know when the crappie are back.
Swimming.
Mark will not let you fish in it. He does not want his liner torn.
The bottom fishing especially.
I noticed in the picture in the paper yesterday that your cover was in the papers, so it's something we have to pay attention to. Your intake cover, did you see that?
It is. We rescreened it. It looks fantastic.
Okay.
Anything else on water?
13, stormwater project status report. All righty then. Thank you all for coming.